Do you want incremental growth or do you want massive growth? Do you want to be a little successful or do you want to be way successful? That's the question every business owner, investor, entrepreneur asks themselves. And today we're going to discover what it takes to do something different than our competition is doing something different than the market is doing, and being successful with it, and doing it in a very matter-of-fact, incremental way. So we're going to make massive changes incrementally. And we're here with somebody who wrote the book on this subject. The book is Do the Opposite, and the author is our guest, Paul Gottsegen. Paul, it's great to have you on the Wealthability Show. And if you would, give us a little of your background, because you've got quite a wealth of experience.
Yeah, great to be here, Tom. Thank you for having me. I'm a career marketing professional in large companies. You would have heard of some of them: Dell, Compaq, Hewlett-Packard, Infosys, Mindtree, and now at ISG. And giving away my age, I'm 62 years old. Next year will be my 40th year being in the arena as a practitioner in marketing and business. And I learned a lot along the way. My teams have enjoyed a tremendous amount of success. And what really strikes me is the coaching tree of people that worked for me over the years that have gone on to such big, successful roles. And I feel a little funny bragging about myself, but we've had great success. And if we didn't have success, why would anybody want to listen to what we've done? But it's been a lot of trial and error over 40 years. And I feel like I learned everything by making little mistakes along the way. But the most exciting thing for me is mentoring the people that work with me and work for me. And the biggest thrill I ever get is when somebody comes to me and says, "Paul, I learned so much from you," or "I've got a folder, my Paul folder, where I keep all the little gems that you've taught me." And so I ended up writing a book because I wanted to scale that. And my goal is to have people read the book and then come back and tell me that I helped them, or I inspired them, or I coached them to break through and create some new paths that they wouldn't have thought of on their own.
It's great. So your book is titled Do the Opposite.
Yeah.
And it actually reminds me of the Seinfeld show, right?
That's right.
With George Costanza. Do the opposite of everything he's ever done. Do the opposite and you'll be successful. And what do you mean by that? I mean, do you mean literally do the opposite of what everybody else is doing?
No, and it's funny with George Costanza, if you remember, he said something like, "I'm unemployed and I live with my parents. Do you want to date me?" And it worked. And that's fun and that's Hollywood, but that's not really what I'm talking about. It's not so much to be a contrarian and say everything you say is black, I'm going to say is white, because that would be super annoying. But what I find is, and I'll give you some examples, sort of in every path of your work day, there are things that are happening: how people present, how people run a meeting, how people make decisions, how do you communicate to your boss's boss, and they're all okay. And they're kind of the standard conventions of how people think all of these things should go. And somewhere along the way, early in my career, I had a mentor early on that really pushed me in this way. And I always went a little bit of a different route in all these aspects. And it always paid off for me because it feels like a form of race to mediocrity if you look at how people present or make decisions or evangelize internally. And you end up putting a ceiling on yourself by becoming beholden to these best practices. So I'll give you an example in sport. I'm a sports nut. You're going to find out real quickly. I'm from New Orleans, born and raised there. My parents and grandparents from New Orleans. If the Super Bowl, or the only time the Saints were in the Super Bowl, they were losing at halftime, 10-6. They hadn't scored a touchdown. And they did something dramatic that surprised everybody. They opened the second half with an onside kick. And they recovered that kick, scored a touchdown, and won the game. But that was never done before. It didn't break a rule. There was no penalty for the onside kick, but it broke a conventional norm and shocked everybody. And the Saints probably would not have won that game without that onside kick. So even though I'm not an NFL coach and it's not as exciting as NFL, it's that exact same mindset in every part of my day. I'm looking for ways to beat the competition by trying something a little bit unique, a little bit new, and not just getting sucked into what everybody else is doing.
I like that. We have in our company, we have one of our values is break it. And it scares people when I tell them that. It
Yeah,
actually scared the employees to death when we first announced that was going to be one of our values. But what I found is what they did was they broke the norm. You use that term. They broke the Saints
yeah,
broke the norm. And so we have to do something so different that it throws other people off or that it helps us to shine. So what are some of the steps that you take? Some people are naturally creative, naturally innovative, but not everybody is. So you mentioned in your book that you think that this is a pattern, that you can actually follow a pattern.
that's
And
right.
if you do so, you can actually figure out what it is that needs to be done differently. So, what are some of those steps that you take or that you talk about in your book to really break that, get out of that rut that we get into with so-called best practices, which
That's right.
really mean average practices?
That's right. I'll give you an example. Like, let's say you're presenting to a crowd, and there's a whole chapter about how to effectively give a presentation. And hey, let's go back to Seinfeld for a second. Remember his joke of people are more afraid of giving a presentation than they are of death. And he has in a Seinfeld ways, they'd rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy. That's the Seinfeld joke. And everybody's a little bit scared. I'm scared when I get up in front of a crowd. And I wrote a chapter in the book that if it's really pragmatic, people can follow these 9 or 10 steps, and anybody can be a great presenter, not only in business, but giving a wedding toast or in your personal life. And I'll just we don't have that much time, I'm sure, but let me just give you the beginning and the end of when you
Great.
watch somebody present. So somebody walks on stage, and the first words out of their mouth will likely be something like, I know I'm the only one standing in between you and dinner or drinks or lunch. That was funny 30 years ago, the very first time I heard that, and a little bit funny the second time. And now it's 1,000 times, and it's trite, and it's just a way to try to break the ice, but you're not distinguishing yourself. You're not hurting yourself. And then at the end of the presentation, somebody 90% of the time, you can see that they're done. You can see the look in their eye that they're done, and they don't know what to do. They haven't practiced how they're going to have a mic drop kind of moment. So they'll say the same 2 words. It's with that, let me turn it back over to Tom. So what I explain in the book is memorize the first 45 seconds word for you don't memorize anything else except the end, but if you can go out on stage, and I know like the first 3 sentences word for word, almost like I'm in a play. Now it would be a disaster if I did that for the whole presentation. I've just got to think it. And then the end is the same way. So I'm at the end. I've got a presentation tomorrow, and in the last minute I already know I'm going to have a great haymaker close at the end. It's a super strong close, but most people just say with that. And I'll just give you one more tip that's a common one that people that I work with love. When you watch somebody present, they get presenter voice where all of a sudden they're talking really loud and it doesn't sound conversational. So you get out on stage and you just talk the way I'm talking to you right now. No different. I'm just talking to one person, very conversational. So those are just the beginning, the end, the conversational speaking. Don't people notice when you're looking down at those confidence monitors 80% of the time? And I'm always wondering, like, well, why don't they realize we can see them looking down? They're not looking at the audience. So there's about 10 different really basic tenets in that chapter. And once you learn them, and my team has learned them, it's almost like you can decode whenever you're watching someone present, like, wow, they really missed an opportunity to distinguish themselves. And it's important to be a powerful speaker, but don't ever think it's something that only a few people can do. 100% of the people listening to this podcast can be a great speaker in your own style, not my style or your style, their own style.
So your expertise is marketing. You
Yeah.
spent 40 years in marketing, chief marketing officer for big companies. Um, what have you found? And I'm sure you described this in your book, but what have you found that really distinguishes a marketing message?
Yeah.
I think that is the hardest thing. It's so easy to get a message out, but it's so hard because there's so many messages out there. It's so hard to distinguish yourself. And on top of that, we spent years and years trying to distinguish ourselves in Google AdWords. And now all of a sudden it's AI, which completely changes the game. So let's start with the general on, okay, what makes a distinctive marketing message. And then let's talk about how AI plays into that.
Yeah. There's three key elements to this. Something I learned kind of in the hallways of a great company in the 80s and 90s called Compaq. They're very good at messaging. We call it positioning. And the first key thing people need to recognize is you need to position your company. Positioning means all the consumers have all the different competitors in their mind positioned. So the easy way to think of it is automobile companies. Volvo, safety. That's what you think of. BMW, performance handling, the ultimate driving machine. Mercedes, luxury. Now, guess what? My wife drives a Volvo. It handles great. It's luxurious, but you can't say, well, Volvo, we're safe, we drive well, and we're luxurious. You have to pick a hilltop that no one else has. It has to be credible because if Kia says they're the most luxurious car around, people might question that. So it has to be compelling and credible.
Well, and you need to and you need to be the leader, right? I mean, so Volvo is the leader in safety. I mean, they've got all the data to show it.
Well, it's true. And then the way to decode that, I have a saying. It's going to sound like a limerick or something or a haiku. First is best, best is good, better is okay, nothing else matters. And what that means with positioning is if you can say you're first, Chrysler, the first minivan, that kind of thing, that's the strongest positioning because no one can ever come in and take that away from you. If you can't be first and you can be the best, like Volvo with safety, that's great. And if you can't be first or best, you can be better against the number one competitor, and then nothing else matters. And then what you need to do once you have your positioning statement that you're the first or the best, then you need to break down into three pillars of messaging, not two, not four. And one of them might be all around speed and performance, one might be all around ease of use, and one might be all around customer service. And then you wrap features, functions, and benefits together. I think a big mistake with messaging, this is kind of old school, that is timeless, is you wrap your features and functions and benefits all together as you're explaining and describing your offering. Where I think somewhere along the way over the years, you'll see websites or PowerPoint slides that just list a whole bunch of benefits, but they're not in the context of the features. So we spent a lot of time with developing a positioning statement and a key fact. And I will say that the book's only been out for 10 days, but I've gotten early feedback and people love my positioning chapter more than any other chapter. So it's a lost art and something that I was lucky enough back in the 80s and 90s to learn at the knee of some real masters at Compaq and take that forward to my team and have rebranded big companies like Infosys and Dell and Mindtree.
All right. So how does that function in a world of AI? Because we're no longer doing searches of websites. We're no longer doing searches of keywords. We're asking a question and expecting to get a complete answer from AI. Now, and on top of that, nobody asked the same question. So, and what question you ask determines what answer you get. So, how do you wrap that positioning
Yeah.
into a form so that AI finds you?
There's two things there. AI is the tidal wave, and if people aren't focused and spending time every day on AI, it's going to be problematic. And when it comes to search, we spent so many years on Google
Right?
optimization, SEO. And now my team for the last year and a half, we call it GEO, generative AI optimization. Some people call it AI optimization, but it's entirely different. You have to have frequently asked questions on the key pages of your website. You have to change the metadata, the schema of your website. And it requires a lot of relearning and new skills so that you will come up in the answers of an LLM when they're asking questions. And we're seeing great results here, but it's a focused area. But overall, with AI and the marketing team, we were dabbling. After ChatGPT came out in November of 2022, we were dabbling. Then we got out of dabbling and got really intense about it, but we went in like 15 different directions. And a year ago, it was kind of like what our clients are doing in a way, or we're doing. And now we have governance. We have a use case library. We meet every week with the team just on AI. And now, for example, when we come out with a message and a new offering, it's a multimodal AI prompt, but we just push a button. In the old days, I'd say, okay, you do the website, you write the press release, you write the email. It'd be like 10 core deliverables. Now it's like, hey, you push the button or a multimodal AI prompt, it'll create a great first draft of everything. And you can use an LLM to help you with your positioning as long as you have the construct of, okay, it's positioning. I've got to position against the competition. I've got to have a quantitative proof point, and I need three distinct pillars. And AI is helpful crafting that message as long as you get familiar with a prompt that understands your brand and understands your tone.
And I've actually found that you can even ask AI what your position is and see what it finds.
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating
Yeah.
to see what AI thinks your position is, because it's looking at everything and it's going, hey, according to what we see, basically, here's your position. And if you don't like it, maybe it's time to change it. So going back to your book, you're a little contrarian. I'm going to say you're breaking it. You're not throwing everything out, but you're a bit contrarian. How does that apply to using AI in your marketing? Because it seems to me, if again, AI is a really good way to be average, because everybody else has access to the same AI that you do. And so it's gathering the same information. How do you break out from that so that you're not asking AI to write your scripts and they're writing everybody else's scripts?
No, right. That's a big challenge. We do all of our thought leadership from our smart people projecting their ideas around AI. None of it's written by AI, not a word. It's different when we're developing an email that we want to send to a client to try to get them to respond and develop some kind of prospect that we're nurturing. We can use AI for that. But for the content of our core thoughts that our advisors develop, we don't touch AI, because then, as you say, it just becomes completely generic. And our data and our experience and our thought leadership are a differentiation. So we have a lot of governance internally, not only with the marketing team, with the firm overall. So we get benefit from AI in efficiency and coming up with new ideas, but not to develop the core IP of who we are, and not even really who we describe ourselves. To me, there's a contrarian nature of the book, but the other element of it, I'd say, is humanity, that you're working with people. And I remember when I first started working, we all had white shirts and ties and gray suits, guys. And you sort of conformed, and bosses would yell, and that was normal. Well, people these days, they don't want a boss that's yelling, or a boss that doesn't know what their spouse's name is, or what their kids or pet's name is, or doesn't smile, and they don't understand. They need to connect with people personally. So one of the key things I explain in the book is when you're leading a team, how do you get how do you personally connect with your organization without getting too personal? Um, and it could be a little thing. Here's a little trick, not a trick. I mean, I love doing it, but I have staff meetings every week, another kind of lost art, but it's important to stay connected. But now we're all virtual. We're all just on a screen like you and I now. So I end every staff meeting talking about what my wife and I are watching on TV, what we're streaming. And I'm encouraging everybody to chip in and give their opinions and talk about what they're streaming. In the old days, when we were in one room, we wouldn't have time for this. But it's important to take time for that because then people start to feel an emotional bond to you as a leader and to other people on the team. There's a number of different elements of how I deploy this throughout my work life, but it makes an enormous difference because people want to be, if they're going to follow you, they want to follow somebody that's a human being and not just a boss or just a leader. So,
I've
yeah,
always found that you have two choices if you really want to connect. You can be interesting or you can be interested.
yeah,
And
right.
some people are naturally interesting and they're great and we love listening to them. And for the rest of us, we can be interested because that's not everybody can be interested. And especially if you're curious, if you naturally have a, you want to learn something, you want to learn. Why not learning about your people? Why not learn about other people? This is, I think, a big part of AI that is missing. You kind of alluded to it that you use AI for efficiency. It is really a back office. It's
Yeah.
taking care of your back office, right? It's not. AI does not have cognitive thought. That's thing people think it does. People think it can figure things out. It cannot figure things out. What it can do is it can do the mechanical stuff. And because people still like people. And I think that you made a really good point of it is that you don't rely on AI to write your marketing pitch because
Right.
AI is not people. And you want to you're actually marketing to people. So you've got to use that people, that sense of people. How do you get a sense of the people you're talking to and what message is going to resonate? Let's finish with that.
Internally, you mean when I'm leading
Uh,
teams? Or
Internally and externally.
like internally, it's really a matter of engaging authentically, putting your title at the door, not wielding your title, and being truly interested in their career and coaching them. And to me, the big trick that I learned this from maybe my first boss, is don't ever tell anybody what to do, ever. I never tell anybody on my team what to do. What I'll do is I'll say, I have a suggestion for you. If I were in your shoes, here's what I do. You do what you want, but here's my suggestion. And what I'm trying to do is get them to think for themselves, realize they have all the power, not me, that I'm expecting them to come up with the ideas. And what happens is some people struggle with that when they work with me the first couple of months and they're trying to figure out, why am I not telling them exactly what to do? Why do I keep pushing back to them? Like, don't just come to me with data, give me insights. And then the light bulb goes off and they develop this amazing sense of empowerment that, okay, even though I'm working for a large company, I can set my own agenda and I'm in charge. And Paul, as a leader, is here to just watch my back, guide me, give me advice. This is kind of how I learned from this one particular great first mentor I had. And it's the big secret that makes all the difference. But there's ways to do it that people appreciate that, we can get into.
So that's internally. How do you do that externally? How do you do that with your market?
See, externally, you the way I explained when you speak to a crowd about being conversational, the exact same. You want to write an email to a prospect as if you're having a conversation. Don't put formatting on it. Don't make it look. Here's the trick in marketing: don't ever make it look like marketing. it sounds so counterintuitive. I've been in marketing since, forever, 40 years. And yet every day I'll preach to my team, like, nope, you can't. This email that you're drafting, it looks like marketing. And nobody wants to be marketed to. They just want to have a conversation and get their interest piqued. So a lot of it is just the format and the wording of an email or PowerPoint presentations. Is another area I spend a lot of time with all my teams, try to train them to make them so you don't just do what everybody else does and cram a lot of icons or words on a slide and put acronyms. My goodness, acronyms. We can get into that and how dumb that is. So just
Thank
speaking
you
in
for
natural
saying that,
language.
by the way. I hate acronyms. I mean, I live in a world of acronyms, right? I'm a CPA. I'm an acronym, right? And I hear people talk all the time in acronyms. And thank you for saying that. Do not use acronyms.
No, I mean, my wife works at a hospital and was telling me about her CMO, and I thought it was my counterpart. And like a year later, I found out it was the chief medical officer. You never know. You never know. Yeah.
Yeah, you
But
cause
no,
confusion.
there's a lot. Here's another great example externally is LinkedIn. That's the business social media that's
Yep.
powerful. So here's how I go, not contrarian, but a month ago was Davos, the big event in Switzerland that all the muckety mucks go to. And it's kind of hilarious because some of us get our feeds filled up with these smart people that I love, friends of mine, and they're out in the cold and they've got some nice parka on, and it's really high def. And they're talking about AI and how exciting it is to be there. But it's too much of a good thing. So I did a counter post just for fun. I had my wife take a picture of me in the snow, and I did a whole post about the non Davos people, the NDs. I was just having a little fun thinking whatever. It turned out to be the biggest level of engagement I've ever received. It had like 250,000 impressions. It went all over the world. I picked up a lot of followers just because I did the exact opposite of all the posts that everybody saw out there. And I kind of struck a nerve. Everybody was frustrated with those Davos posts. But in general, on LinkedIn, the tips I put in the book, which I think are counter to what you hear, don't litter your post with hashtags or tagging people. Just let it stand on its own. No hashtags, no tagging. Just respect the followers that you have. Speak authentically to them. That's why you're there. Don't disrespect them by doing a post just to try to collect more followers. Um, don't put in something trite like something amazing that Bill Gates once said or somebody famous once said. Tell me what you think, who you are, not who somebody else is. And that's been the key. I kind of figured this out through trial and error. And people vote with their clicks. They don't want you to shill for your company all the time. They really don't. They don't want to see that you're having dinner, a great steak dinner with Joe. They want to hear something personal about you. Not too personal, don't go crazy, but they want to hear something about you and your life. They want to understand you. And there's a great Johnny Cash biopic that I just love. Walk the Line. Is that it?
Yep. Walk the
And
line.
the early scene, he's the first time in the studio with Sam Phillips at Sun Records, and he's doing a gospel tune. And Sam Phillips stops him and he says, "No, we've heard this gospel tune a million times. I want to hear you. What's authentic to you, Johnny Cash?" And all of a sudden, he breaks out with like one of his big hits. Uh, Folsom Prison or whatever. But that's the way I operate. I want people to know who I am. It's got to be authentic, and externally and internally, people love that type of humanity. And that's what people just don't recognize. And the conventional wisdom is to put on a game face and not show that. Some people don't even put on their video in meetings, right? That's not gonna that's not gonna get you that far.
So the book is do the opposite. We've had Paul Gottsegen with us. He is the author of Do the Opposite, and I'm a big fan of Do the Opposite. As I wrote in Tax Free Wealth, it's tax-free, and it is doing the opposite. And when we do hold ourselves out differently. We don't follow the conventions, and we actually do things that are unique, that are interesting, and we're interested. We're always going to make way more money and pay way less tax. We'll see you next time on the Wealthability Show. Thanks for listening to the Wealthability Show. If today's episode gave you a new perspective, remember this: the tax law is not your enemy. It's a roadmap. And when you know how to follow it, you can build real, lasting wealth. If you're a business owner or investor who's tired of overpaying taxes, the Wealthability Accelerator is your next step. You'll have the opportunity to work directly with me for 80% less than my standard rate. And I'll personally guide you through how to change your facts so that you can change your tax. Go to wealthability.com/bonus and apply today. Remember, it's not just what you make, it's what you keep.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.